last two things, but those weren't mentioned in that information that we looked at for what is an effective coach. But it is something that the district is asking coaches to do. Do you have any questions so far? I do have articles, the articles if you want to take a look at them. I have some copies of them.
Okay. I was in the subgroup that was charged to do surveying. So we got to survey at the secondary level, the middle school principals, high school principal, actually district-wide principals, and then we had the teachers at the middle school and high school level, and you put together the ones for the elementary. So this is district-wide when you're looking at this. When you see the peach kind of colored, that is, the keys down there, the district criteria. So it kind of goes back to the matrix Diana was just showing you. At first we started out with the word important, but really all of these things are important. So really what we were trying to show by the results of this survey is how do the other people in the district value what the instructional coaches are doing, whether they're a math coach or literacy coach, just our coaches in general. So we were super thrilled to see that student achievement and success, everyone agrees, is highly valued. And strengthening teacher instruction, improved teaching quality. That was the first one on Diana's matrix. And that showed research says, hey, this is very important. Our district values it as well. And what that would look like is differentiated, Diana kind of explained that already, the walkthroughs and individual cognitive coaching twice a month, plus goal setting, short and long term, which we tried to take care of that using a lot of our data-driven, our Ames Web and DRAs and SRIs, those different data that we're collecting. Because I'm not an instructional coach, I just want to share a little bit. I thought, well, I think I'm the weakest link on this committee because they've all been instructional coaches or principals, and actually I've had the opportunity this year to go into the interventionist role in a building that doesn't have an instructional coach. So it was very interesting to be part of this program of study at the same time of having this experience of what is it like to not have a coach after having that coach support for those last couple of years. And I think when we look at this one here, the data-informed decision-making, the instructional coaches, it's a lot on their plate, and it's very important. That's how we set our goals. That's how we help have that collaboration with our teachers and strengthen what their needs are, because if they're a strong teacher, they're going to have successful students. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to collect that data, and I wonder how in the world can an instructional coach do that and the other things, and they're doing amazing at it, but I can definitely feel in a building that doesn't have that instructional coach that need to have that shared responsibility or have that other person have that responsibility so they can then collaborate with the teachers so the teachers aren't spending so much time doing that, taking that one thing off that teacher's plate. And helping the kids become successful. So the other thing that rated highly on the matrix from the research that Diana showed was the build relationships and collaboration, which I think next year's calendar that we have should help with that collaboration. But Des showed an 11 out of 12 on the matrix from the previous slide. It's important to have those relationships. And you can see that not everyone in our district values that, so we're not sure if that was just perceived differently. They understood the question differently. We thought maybe they were looking at it more from just like
what they feel just the most important versus
they were looking at
every single duty of the coach. So there's just some things they might not have.
Because in order to get the rest of this to be effective, and that was really our key word, it's not just about having a body in the building, an instructional coach in the building, but having an effective instructional coach that is really strengthening the teachers, therefore making the students more successful. You need to build those relationships to be successful with that and to have the buy-in from your teachers. I noticed this year, without having an instructional coach, we have fewer word walls. I'm not seeing as many quad D activities and things like that. So I really can see the value of the improved teaching quality and strengthening teacher instruction by having that coach there. So I just wanted to share my personal experience of really missing an instructional coach in the building. But you can see where the different people value, and we are glad that everyone feels student success and strong teachers are the most important. So this is just where we are currently at. We're not at 100%. We're at about the 75 plus. The amount of coaches that we have, we feel we are effectively covering everything that is in purple in this column right here. So there's a few things that we're lacking by not having that 100%. And this was really going back to the squares, what I was saying, I can see from the interventionist without an instructional coach how that you need that person there. So Emily's going to explain how these will look, what we recommend to keep it effective with fewer coaches.
Okay, so as we started our committee, we kind of went a few different ways on how we felt like it would be best to present this information. And Leanne kept telling us we want to focus on effectiveness and what it takes to have an effective program. So the next few slides are what we feel like as a committee we could do effectively. So obviously at 100% staffed, we feel like we could cover the following categories effectively as coaches. And then as we go to the next slide, the next recommendation that was given to us to make for you guys is 75% plus. And this is then where we start to show where we feel like that effectiveness may not be in place anymore. And then some suggestions to where we feel like some of the help and some of the responsibilities that would go along with that task may have to be picked up. So the first things that we feel like would have to be a shared responsibility or handed over completely would be the data-informed decision-making. And this is a big part of our job. And with schools who don't have a coach 100% there, are already having to do different things with it. So intervention teams and principals are having to really get in there more and help out with that. We talked about possibly putting together a district-wide data team to help share that role. We talked about it needing to maybe go into an overload or stipend, possibly adding that to our BLT, head teacher roles. We just tried to throw out some suggestions that we feel like can help with those categories. So the other areas that we feel like at 75%, when we don't have 100% in the building at all times, the other categories that would start to need some help would be curriculum implementation, the members of the school, specific school committees, which would be our SAT team or our building leadership team, because if we were to share buildings, that would be multiple buildings that we have to be on those teams, and that would get kind of tricky with timing and everything. So, and then the last one would be the building responsibilities, which a lot of times would be like the recess duties and bus duties and things like that if we weren't there full time. The next slide is 75%. And again, I just want to say that this is what we feel like would could be done effectively. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't continue to try to do our very best in every area, because of course we would. We just couldn't say that it would be as effective, at least as what it is right now. So as we go from 75% to 75, some additional areas would be the relationships and collaboration. We really feel like that's an area that would be sacrificed as we continue to go down. I think that as we've all started as coaches, we feel like the relationship piece is something that you have to have in place before you're really able to move forward with a lot of the people in your building. So that would be an area of concern. The district-wide accessibility, we feel like would start to be effective. The coordinating and organizing of programs and assessments, a lot lot of coaches have to do with that role, and that would be something that we would need some additional help and support with. And again, we've given the suggestions that we've presented to the district leadership team off to the side of that. And then the inventory. And then the last recommendation that we were asked to provide for you all is what it would look like at 50%. So at 50%, we feel like the only two things that we feel would be very effective and that we would put most of our time and effort into would be the student achievement, success, and then the strengthening of teacher instruction. And then the other areas, we've come up with the best suggestions that we feel like we can at this time as to where we might be able to go with those other areas. Do you have any questions?
All right, so finally, from what we've learned from this committee is that the foundations of effective coaching would be building relationships, strengthening for instruction and student achievement. And to be able to support that, we need got to focus in on professional development, district-wide accessibility, data-informed decision-making, curriculum implementation, coordinating programs and assessments, participating on committees, and helping with extra responsibilities. And finally, scientific-based research says coaching supports the national priority for improving teacher quality. And school-based coaching benefits students through providing high-quality instruction. So they're very important to, they're a big part of our student success. Do you have any questions?
It seems like at the very least, our job description needs to be updated to
That is so funny that we said the
collaboration.
exact same thing. We definitely feel like we need to relook at our job description. I think it's been a few years since that's been looked at, and some things don't fit in well with some of what the research has shown and what they feel like is effective coaching. So definitely. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, we really appreciate it. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot of good research you provided tonight, thank you.
The committee did a very good job. We're really happy with the results. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
hey,
you.
ladies, I want to thank you because I know it was a lot of time and effort to go into this, and the information that you were providing, and Mr. Hogan and Ms. Scott got to get a little preview of this the other day when we shared this with my leadership team. But this is going to be helpful for us, as will the other committee reports as we go later into this month and maybe into the beginning of May, and having to kind of look at these things and make decisions about how we staff for next year. So, and along with that, I think Dr. Hopkins hit on something, kind of a side benefit is this can really help us kind of focus and improve these programs as well, and making sure that our job description really is aligned with what are the most important things we want to get out of coaching. So thank you for all your time and effort.
Moving on now to Okay, I've asked Ms. Hochschild to share some information with you this evening about how our school improvement plans have evolved over time. So just to give you a historical view here, with No Child Left Behind in 2002, we were required to have school improvement plans. Now, our Title I schools, all our schools are Title I, kindergarten through 6th grade, except for Plymouth, and it's based on the poverty levels in those schools. But at that time, they were required to have a Title I school-wide plan. That was 15 years ago. At the same time, QPA required our non-Title I schools to have school improvement plans. And this is kind of where they differ. Title I plans have to be updated once a year. But that doesn't mean you go in and revise the whole thing. It means you have about 10 questions that you have to answer. Have you changed this? Have you changed that? It's a very fast process. We really didn't go in and change those. When we initially looked at those school improvement plans, it was a huge process. I mean, some of them were up to 72 pages long. They were huge. So we didn't go in and look at them every year. They pretty much sat on the shelf, and that's all we did with them. The non-Title I schools, they were really never required to go in and look at theirs again. So over time, we just continued not to really look at them. So I'm going to have Barb kind of share some of the rest of the challenges with that.
I was absolutely blown away when we first started having to do these plans, and they were like forever long and repetitive. It was like, how many times can we answer one question in how many different ways? And, you know, as I reflect back, as Leanne and I were working, I reflect back on what did we do with them? I mean, I think back, and as we go into this a little further about what we've done in the last few years, and I think, I don't even remember looking at them once we got them done. It was like, whew, it's done and it's set on a table. And you never went back, you never looked at it. Maybe when we started up at Bernadine Sits, there were maybe a couple people who really worked on it and got that data in there. But, when you think about it, most of that data was summative data. And really, where do you go with that when you talk about where we are right now? So when you talk about staff having buy-in, they didn't have the buy-in because a couple people did it, you kind of reviewed it, and then it sat on the shelf for the rest of the time. So really, I couldn't even tell you what was in most of those plans, to tell you the truth. And, when you talk about, and I listened to the ladies who were presenting tonight about goals, I don't remember there being any real goals that would go back and be reflective of what you were doing in your buildings. It wasn't there. So, then we get back to the focus school status. So, Bernadine Sits and Charles Stone's were both on focus school status for 3 years, and then we had an additional year in there where they continued to help us with some of the things as they transitioned into their new programming. When we started this, it was one of the most devastating things I can tell you. It was a lot of tears, a lot of where did we go wrong? Because, and I know when you look at this school improvement, you think, okay, we went from No Child Left Behind. Well, I will never forget thinking, yes, we made No Child Left Behind, and then get called into the office, and all of a sudden, oh, but be real careful what you wish for, because we wanted out of that No Child Left Behind, but then they put in a whole new process, which was the new improvement system, which then put us on focus school status. But what I learned from that, and what I think we need to take away, is where we went with our improvement plans. When we started looking at reporting progress and what the state indicators were, what the district was asking, we were able to do kind of a crosswalk. We were able to look at what the state was asking, what the district was asking, and try to make sense of that, to know that we had a focus as to where we needed to go. Setting goals, setting committees, working together, looking at that feedback, and then trying to move forward with what would be best for the students in our schools. Kansas Star was made available at that time through IndaStar. We didn't use it for more than just a little bit, because at that time, when we did the crosswalk, we went completely to reporting to what the district was asking us to do. So we reported on a monthly basis, but we continued to check on our progress. Where were we at? How did we look at those indicators? Where we needed to go? So it became a more a working document of what we needed to do and where we needed to go.
And at that point, you decided not to use Kansas.
Right, because we were allowed with that crosswalk with the district to make our own process go through the district, and then they just looked at that.
Okay, so now we do have new school improvement plans. They are required by Title I, and it really aligns with the PISA process that Renee's been talking to you about. And again, the Kansas State Department of Education has made Kansas Star available to everybody. The course, they decided not to use it. We decided we wanted to look at it again. It had been probably 2 or 3 years since they approached the focus schools with that. We started looking at it. They deeply improved it. I mean, all of the wise ways research was included in it. It was updated. When you had looked at it, the research was back in the 60s when it was all updated. So at that point, you decided to move forward with it. You had Jen Stelter from Southwest Plains come and work with you last year to put everything onto that system, and what did you think?
Well, because we were moving away from that focus school status and having to report back to the district on that monthly basis, would have been easier to put it on Kansas Star, and she helped us with that process. And it became easier. It was a lot clearer, those wise ways. Seriously, when we looked at some of those, and they were looking at educational research back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was like, seriously, we've changed a whole lot. We don't need to go back that far. So when we looked back, it had changed a lot, and they made it a lot more user-friendly.
So we decided that we wanted everybody to have an updated school improvement plan and to really be utilizing that. We offered Kansas Star, knowing that they didn't want it at first, but they had changed their minds. We didn't tell them they had to use it, but every school has chosen to get on to Kansas Star. And what are your thoughts so far?
Well, it's, like I said, it's a working document, which is so much better than what we had in redoing those old QPA Title I forms. It's right there. You can go in. Everything that you need is right there. You can either upload it in a document, or you can put it in where their files are. They've made it so much easier, where you can go in and you can look, and as, if your teachers want to go in and look, they can go in and look. You can share it. You can put it up. I think it's just easier than what we
She's
had.
going to share some screenshots, what that looks like, and kind of take you through that.
Okay, when you look at managing your school improvement plans on Kansas Star, they ask you to do 3 things. They ask you to assess where you are, and that means you have to look at the indicators that they have available for you to look at. Then you're going to create a plan and revise that, deciding on who might be in charge of it in the building, where are you at, and I can show you that as we go on. And then you go in to monitor it, so you continually look at that. So it's always at the forefront. So it becomes that continuous process. Your BLTs, your building leadership teams, can work on those during meetings. You can bring it to the whole staff, maybe during faculties or in those smaller settings with those professional learning communities. So this is kind of your process that you see when you get on the Kansas Star, when you look at what the indicators are and where you'll go. So we'll go to the next part. So when you look at that, that assess piece, they give you a whole list of what you can look at that are effective practices, and then how you would look at those in different subcategories. So in each of these categories that you see here, there are subcategories in them with goals that you can look at, indicators that you can look at, that you might want to assess and see where you are in your process.
Where is the PLC under leadership?
Well, your professional learning ones. Well, the leadership and decision making are mostly what you do from your leadership building. So, and then what you'll want to look at more, and what they suggested to us, because when we started, they just kind of threw them out and said, pick 10. And we were like, wow, there's a ton of them there. And we picked, and then they were like, no, we're going to look at key ones, and you'll see those as we continue to go. But if you go ahead, this is part of the list, and then this is the second part. And keep in mind, under each of those, there's subcategories. So it was easy to move through the leadership ones. Those were pretty easy to pick up. But we need to focus, I think, more on your classroom instruction, your curriculum, and you'll see that they have the tiered support. They have 4 different things here under MTSS that you need to look at and work on. And you can get them where you can actually just continue to monitor. You've kind of got them established in your buildings. And so all you really need to do is just continue to go back and look and make sure you're on course. So that would be your assess.
So one of the first was establish your PLCs.
Yeah. Excuse me, yes. Okay, so then the next one is you create. And I just took a screenshot of things that we're doing at the school. So we looked way back, and you'll see the dates kind of vary because we weren't on. We kept track, but it was under district, and so some of those dates look a little bit off. But when you look at like the different indicator numbers are on the side, and those indicators then you have to create a plan for to decide how you will achieve that, where you are, where you think you can be, and then put a date as to a finish to it. So if you go forward, I can kind of show you how you create that. So this is how you create your plan. We started in, one of my BLT members will be in charge. They decided that the current staff are going to develop a checklist or a timeline to provide new teachers an outline of essential information and expectations for them at the building level. One of the things when we looked last week at our indicators, they really felt like some of the new staff just needed a checklist. It is so overwhelming at the beginning of the year. How could we do something to help them? So they're going to create a timeline providing essential information, outlining expectations. You select a team member. We selected Michelle. We said, you know, really we think we can have that done, work on it this spring, set it into place next fall, probably complete it by then. Is it reoccurring? Well, probably, because you're going to need to add things in. You're going to have to look at them. But probably if you check it monthly, you can kind of see where you're at. And it should be able to be completed in a year. So that would be how you would create a plan. Make sure, just notes to self, they have a little thing in there. Make sure that the information is ready to go by August for new staff, just kind of to keep you thinking. So the next one is how do you monitor it then? So how do you know if you're at 100% or if you're only at 50%, which we still are on our paraphrase and summarize. But how do you know? Well, you go back in, and Leanne, I'll let you show them how to monitor it. You have to set it up, and you have to decide again. You know, is it going to be complete? Well, this one in particular, the school regularly communicate with parents about its expectations of them, the importance of the curriculum of the home, parents, and what they can do at home to support their children's learning. We really feel like this is a strength of ours. And so we feel like we're there, it's become part of our culture, and we will continue to do it. So we're going to say that we're complete, that we're going to check it off. We've got people that are going to take charge of setting up committees and get that going for next year. The importance that we've learned is how to engage parents, like you talked about earlier with Gertrude Walker. You don't just involve them, you engage them. You have to get them in, you have to show them what their children are doing and what they can do at home to help. Well, all of these things you kind of do, but you don't have it laid out for you as to how you could do it better and be more effective in your schools. So that would become how you monitor the plan.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is the monitor, the plan that you just had up there, does that cover all of those items that were under monitor plan?
You have to go through for
Or
each
is it for each single one?
indicator you do. You pick an indicator and you have to assess it. Where are you at now? Then you create a plan and then you monitor to completion.
So can you go back to the one just before that? So each of those, 110, 116, 104, each of those will have their own separate plan.
Right. And some of those you'll see we completed to say we feel like they're part of our culture now.
And they've been doing this for a long time.
And we
So
have
there's a
had,
lot on here. The schools that just started are choosing 5.
yeah. And this is a snapshot. Right, this is a snapshot. This isn't all we've completed, but we just did a snapshot for you to see how that process works, how you have to assess, create, and monitor, which is so much better than having a plan that sits on your shelf
So
and
how
collects
many
dust.
items would you potentially have?
Well, the schools right now that are just starting just have 5, one from each category. That's what they're working on.
I think we have 7 right now.
And they they specifically work on those before they'd add? So they're not
Anything
gonna be
more.
doing 50 at a time.
Right.
Now,
And-
they had to do several at a time,
Right.
but with the schools just coming on, they don't have to do that. I think it was because they were focused schools.
And I think we were overwhelmed when they first said, you know, you're gonna put about 10 to 12 on your plate, and it was like, how are we gonna put 10 to 12 of those on our plate and keep all of those juggling and try to figure it out? So, you know, as they worked with the process, they also realized that was overwhelming and cut it back and said, you know, look at maybe 7, focus in really keen on those. And then, you know, figure out, are they part of your culture or are they not? And when you feel like it's there and all you have to do is just monitor it, then pick up a new one and move that off. It's always going to be there. You're not going to say, whoop, it's done. It's always going to be monitored, but
The objectives are already provided to you.
the indicators,
The ones, 110, 160.
those are, yeah, if you go back, Leanne, to on the the one with this one here, 7 and 8. That's where I said, you know, if you look at like each of those, if you were to go in on the Kansas Star program and you'd click on this, it'd open up to like 4 different indicators, and then you pick those indicators. But you know, there's I don't know how many under each of those areas. So there's a big gambit of things that you can look at. And you know, when you read through them, you can say, even with our team the other day, we looked through them and we were like, we're doing this. We're already doing it. It's already part
Give
of
an
our culture.
example of one.
Oh, you would put me on the spot.
So you have to go backwards then, because you're already doing it. So you go back and you fill in.
Mhm.
It just seems like a lot of busy work.
Oh, but this is wonderful in comparison. You know, at least it may be a lot of busy work, I would give you that. But I think it's busy work that will take you forward.
So are we creating a more effective school?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, you know, being on that focus school status, you know, and tears and screaming, and Leanne and I think she probably wanted to hurt me numerous times. But, you know, yes, you did. That's okay. I was okay with that because we needed that. But the thing is we became more focused on what we needed to do. We looked at those tiered interventions and we said, what can we do in our curriculum, in our instruction, that would help our students get where they need to be? When you look at,
spend your time filling out a template. I want you practicing.
but you are, because
Yeah,
you're
okay.
only doing those things. You know, you got to use your BLTs, your building leadership teams, pretty effectively. And then you take them and what they suggest, you take that back to the whole, the masses. So they still understand where you are and what you're doing. But you do a lot of this on those building leadership teams.
So did you get out of your comfort zone and did you pick items that were not very, do you know what I'm saying?
Did
It's easy
you
to
see
pick
that
up-
one that's at 50%?
Okay. So
That
you
is a
challenged
comfort zone.
yourselves.
Yeah. You know,
Okay.
when you look at, we've got to have some summarizing and some paraphrasing with those kids. How are we going to get there? Well, we've been working on that one for 1.5 to 2 years.
Because some of them are obviously easier than others. to
Very.
achieve.
You can just read through and say, that's already part of our culture. And you can, you know, get it in there as one that you're already completed. But some of them are going to take a while. Those tiered intervention ones, the MTSS ones, the data that you have to collect anyway, you just put in there. But then they continue to bring it to the forefront. Are we moving forward? Are we actually getting our kids to where they need to be? And that walk-to intervention is a key, because you're going to get those kids, you're going to use that Ames Web screener, and you're going to look at that data and see, then where do we need to go in our instruction? Once we've identified it, where are we going to get them to move on so that we can get them where they need to be? Yes?
Is it an interactive program where it reminds you and it updates you, so that way you are reminded or
No.
constantly, so you have to be proactive and constantly
Yeah.
going, okay.
Renee and Crystal and I actually went in and made some comments the other day, because on May 1st, all Title I schools will be getting feedback from the State Department. The State Department will actually go in and look at theirs. They won't look at anybody else's. that they'll look at theirs, so we gave them some feedback just to get them ready for that next round of Title I looking at them.
And when you look at, I mean, there are different things, go back to, well, it doesn't have it on that, I didn't download it. But, you know, we put in all of our BLT agendas, all of our BLT meetings, and the notes, because they keep notes the same way with our BLT team as we do with our PLCs. So we put all of those, we downloaded all, or uploaded all of those onto the program also, so that if anybody wanted to go in, they could see, what are they working on every single meeting that you meet, because we meet twice a month. So we can go back and we can look at that.
And I think it looks a little overwhelming because there's a lot of choice in what they can choose as their indicators that they're gonna work on. And then, but there is also a lot of support as they're trying to narrow that down and make that decision, and then once they do, to move into that. This will also interface directly with the accreditation system. So the whole continuous process that Barb outlined is really what they're looking for in the accreditation system. Are we finding areas that we need to improve? And then are we putting together plans to make that improvement and following up, monitoring that, and hopefully making that improvement, but adjusting as we go. Hey, we've got this down pretty well, so now we can go on to something else. And so while yes, it's a lot to put in, if we don't put it in here, then we're gonna put it into the accreditation system at some point. We're gonna put it into the system for Title I. So, and as Leanne and Barb said, we didn't tell a single school, you have to do this. We told them, you have to have a school improvement plan, and we're not gonna have a plan that we're just gonna put on the shelf and forget about. We're gonna have a plan that really helps chart what we're gonna do in this school. And we want your staff to be involved in putting that plan together. We want your staff to have ownership in it. So the schools made the choice that, hey, this is a tool that will make this easier for us. And I get with what we're able to see here tonight, it looks like, wow, a lot of words, a lot of easy to get lost. But I think once people have been through the training, this really does simplify for them. And I want to make a comment that school improvement can have a negative connotation. You're a school on improvement. That's not what we intend here. We could call these building plans, we could call them strategic plans. This is really the strategic plan for each of the schools as to how they're trying to improve, meet the needs of their students, and improve their instructional processes. And when you look at our mission vision pieces, and you look at the TISA pieces, there is a lot of overlap. A lot of our people are really focused this year in these plans on building that culture in their schools, and they're using indicators and resources that this Kansas Star is providing. So it's not near as overwhelming as it appears.
Well, and it's a working document, which is way better than where we've been. And you've got to realize where we are is a little bit ahead of maybe where Phil is, because they're just coming on. And so, you know, they're gonna start a little bit slower, they're gonna try to figure out, or Steve, you know, where they are, and it's gonna be a little bit of a slower process. You know, you gotta remember, we've been on this for 4 years. And so we may be a little bit ahead of the game, but I think they'll find, and I could be completely wrong, I think I would rather have a working document any day and be able to say, I can see us making progress and not have to go back through that 72-page document and try to figure out, where does any of this make any sense? You know, setting...
You mentioned utilization of interventionists.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're hearing from interventionists, we're hearing from coaches. It almost, to me, connects, like we should look at every building's plan, improvement plan, to look and see how utilization of different interventionists and coaches and paras and librarians and all these other resources that you have at your disposal, how they're utilized and how they're planned for your buildings.
Right.
To look and see where our demand is.
You know, you look at a building of 500 like what we have, and you look at our walk to intervention, You've got to have people in there to be able to get your tier 2, tier 3, which we still struggle with tier 3 because it's a smaller number ratio to teacher. And so, you know, you've got to have people in your building to help move those children, but the only way you're going to do that is to have people that can work in smaller groups with them. And we utilize everybody in that building. You know, everybody's got.
You think about where you started though, and where you are now.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Hopkins,
Huge.
I think you're exactly right, and that is what we're working on right now, to give Renee, Leanne, and myself the opportunity to take a deeper look into what's going on in the building and provide the appropriate support. So that is one of the pieces, is putting the system into place so that as we have to make decisions about where we put resources, we have more data to be able to help make the best decisions possible. So, and they're in the process of training me on how to be able to go in and do that. But we'll be doing that as a team function here at the central office. We're going to be, next year, we'll be reviewing, I think, probably over a 9-week period, we'll be reviewing 2 building plans a week, and we'll do that in the first semester, and then we'll do that in the second semester. Not as a gotcha, but as a way to help us keep up with what's going on in our buildings and be able to identify ways that we can support the different things that are happening out in our schools.
What a great professional development piece to have too, because one school's gonna learn that, hey, we found something that really works and we wanna share it with another school. To be devil's advocate, you know, my only concern is I want a student from any neighborhood to go to their neighborhood school and get the same quality education as anywhere else in town.
That's right.
And I'm afraid, you know, just on the surface, there's a little bit of potential for one school to do awesome here and another school to do great things in improvement here.
Yeah.
But as long as we come back together, learn from each other,
That's right.
and use it district-wide, I think it's a great tool, because there's a lot of work behind this. And we don't wanna be doing that and not, like you said, just put it on the table.
Right.
We have to, it's such a waste of resources to not use this.
And you can look at each one of those different things and you can think, you know, okay, like you said, do you challenge yourself and do you pick some of those that are a little bit challenged? Get some of those off that you know are there, get them off, don't leave them on your list just so that you can say you have 5. But you gotta keep moving with them. And I think what Dr. Carlin says, if they're going to continue to look at them monthly, you know, it's real easy to get pacified and think, okay, I'll go in and I'll get it done. When we had to do it every month to keep the district informed, we were in there every month. So if we know that that's going to be something that they're going to look at, I think that's a little bit more, puts a little bit more teeth in making sure you're updated on there all the time. It's all about setting goals. Any other questions?